I'm Nathalie, and I'm sure you would have already spotted my accent, but just in case, if you haven't, I'm French. Right. So we are here on Bankside because there's a little event at the moment. It's all about frost fairs. So the frost fairs, they were a massive party market, however you want to call it. Today we'll call it a Christmas pop-up on the river because the river used to freeze. So we have a little event about it, but a lot of it is AR, whatever that means, augmented reality, and I'm too old for that. My phone doesn't, you need an app anyway, and my phone doesn't do it. But there's a few pieces that are actual street art, and they are amazing because it's historical street art. So I'm gonna take you to them. But first, I wanted to start here because we have the ferryman seat. And the ferrymen, they had a role to play in the frost fairs. So the ferrymen, for the ones that don't know, they were those guys charging you to transport you from one side of the river to the other. For about 18 centuries, the London Bridge was the only bridge in London. That's why it's called the London Bridge. And it was closed at night. So if you came down to the South Bank to see a play or whatever, if you wanted to go back to the city of London on the other side, you'd have to pay the ferryman. And so they would sit here. They'll sit here waiting for customers, and then they'll take you to the other side of the river. They used to make a massive amount of money, those ferrymen. They were actually lobbying Parliament to stop the construction of new bridges. And that worked until the mid-1700s. And yes, exactly. The old London Bridge was sold, and it's now in Arizona. And so that's why I wanted to start here, because some of you might have been here before. This area was featured in many Hego tours, I believe. And under the Southwark Bridge, so this is the Southwark Bridge. It is the least used bridge in London, apparently. And under the bridge, we've got little engravings. They represent everything that we used to do on the ice when the ice used to freeze. So I'm gonna go down and show you those engravings, and I'll explain upstairs. We'll get up to the back street, and I'll tell you a bit more about what we've seen on the engravings. So those engravings are not part of the pop-up. They are always here. They are permanent, but we'll also see some temporary art today. There's a boy that wants to be on camera, I think. Right, let me show you. So those are there to remember what we used to do on the ice back in the days. So you've got the old ice skating. You've got some sport here. They used to do competition, archery, games. You have horse carriages on the ice. They used to do horse racing. You have the printers. They used to come down on the ice as well. I'll tell you a bit more about that in a moment because that's very interesting. And the market stall, they used to make crazy money on the ice when that happened. And you had the boat stuck on the stuck into the ice as well. That happened as well. And where are the roasters? Did I miss? Oh, here they are because it's behind the gentleman. They used to roast some meat as well. So massive barbecues on the ice. So big party, but let's go up where it's going to be much more quiet. And I'll tell you a bit more about how that happened and why. So let's go down here. You'll see suddenly it'll be much more quiet because this is like one of the main promenades in London, really. But as soon as we are into the back streets, it's very quiet. Yes, Mark, absolutely. There were many frost fairs over the year, but 1739 there were many dead, and some of them also failed. You know, obviously it's very slippery, so there have been several accidents, over the years. So to tell you a bit more about how the frost fair started, We now believe, the scientists, they believe that we had a mini ice age. Now, it's a fairly new theory. We've only been studying it for the last maybe 80 years. We now believe that from, well, it's debatable. Some historians and scientists believe that from the 1400s, we used to start it at Tudor time, but we now think it started a bit earlier. Basically, they believe that from the 1400s to 1850 maybe, the temperatures of London and a lot of countries in the northern part of the Atlantic were extremely low. Do we have any fans of Games of Thrones? In the show, they keep saying winter is coming, winter is coming. We think they actually refer to the little ice age. We had a period of medieval warming in the 13, 12, and 1100s, and we think from the time of the Tudors it was actually very cold, particularly cold. And that does explain quite a lot in history as well. It explains why people left the Greenland. It would explain why we cared so much about America, because America was full of fur, animal furs, that of course were extremely needed at the time because, it was freezing. And through that time, the Thames froze several times, at least 24 times. Now, the Thames River was freezing for many reasons. One was that the river was much larger at the time. After the Great Stink of 1858, the Great Stink, it's when we had way too much sewer. The public sewers at the time was the river, and we used to dump all the poo, the animal carcasses, everything would go down the river. It wasn't so much of a problem until the industrial revolution. Too many people moved into London, and in 1858 we had the Great Stink. The smell of the river was unbearable, and they commissioned Joseph Bazalgette to create the first sewage system. So he reclaimed a lot of land over the River Thames, and the river was then suddenly a bit deeper and much faster. And before 1831, we had the Old London Bridge. The Old London Bridge was, thank you, sir, yes. The Old London Bridge was, it had 19 pillars. So those very large pillars, they very much slowed down the river. And that's why it froze. And when the river froze, everyone jumped on the ice to have a party, a proper, like today, I suppose we could compare it to going to Winter Wonderland in Hyde Park, amazing amusement park. But Winter Wonderland, we can go for 6 weeks a year. Imagine a party that happens only every 20 years or 30 years. Imagine a party on the ice that your grandmother might have told you about, your parents maybe. And one day, suddenly it happens. Suddenly, you don't know how long for. You don't know how long it's going to last. But suddenly, everyone is down on the ice doing horse carriages, ice skating, sport, gambling, cockfighting, dancing. So it's like it was something really, really impressive. And they would last, one of them lasted 6 weeks actually, but most of the time it was a bit shorter. And it was everyone would go down there. I've lost you for a sec, but we are back. The most famous of the frost fairs, it's actually 1694, the Great Frost. And most of the time it was only here between London Bridge and Blackfriars Bridge, but some of them went a bit further. Once it was all the way to Lambeth and Westminster, and apparently one of them went all the way to Gravesend in Kent. I'm taking you to Gravesend on the 12th of February. So most of the time it was like an improvised explosion of fun, and everyone would go down there, and the printers would literally go bring the printing machine on the ice because they could make a lot of money. People wanted souvenir. Again, a bit like today when you go to Winter Wonderland. I used to work as a photographer in Winter Wonderland, and some of the photos were horrible, but they would still pay £15 to buy them because people want a souvenir. Well, it was exactly the same at the time, and they would buy a little print. Let me show you an example of those prints. So this is one from the last Frost Fair. The last Frost Fair was 1814. After that, it never happened again for many reasons. The main one is that we destroyed the old London Bridge, so the Thames was a bit faster, and also we started to have those power stations along the river, so they would bring a bit of heat as well, and of course the sewage system. So that's from 1814, but let me show you one from 1694 that was printed. 6 pence it used to cost. Look who's visited. Charles, King, that's Charles II. James, Duke, that is the future James II. Catherine, wife of Charles II. Mary, and Princess Anne. Anne, the future Queen Anne. There's a mistake. She doesn't have an E there. I don't know whether the printer made a mistake. Or, sometimes in the 1600s, people spelled their names two different ways. That's why, Shakespeare, he didn't know how to spell his own name, but that was quite common in the 1600s. So sorry, it's a bit noisy. Even the royal family came down, and even the royal family wanted a souvenir. Imagine how cool. Let me show you a painting of what it would have looked like with the horse carriages. So yeah, proper party. And because it was so rare, it was really ephemeral. People loved it. Oh, I don't know whether they went incognito or if they were exposed. That was also a place to be seen. And there's a big myth, really, that in the last Frost Fair of 1814, an elephant went down on the ice. It is very debatable, and as far as I know, there's not a single contemporary eyewitness or contemporary account of the elephant, but it's one of the London myths, the elephant on the last Frost Fair. So yeah, massive party, and also in terms of the market, at the time, the markets, they were heavily regulated. You'd have to pay a fee to have your stall, potentially taxes on everything. On the river, there was no regulation. You were not in the city of London, so you were not in their jurisdiction. You were not in Suffolk, so you are not in their jurisdiction. You could do whatever you wanted, sell whatever you wanted, booze, alcohol, beer, wine, cheap, no taxes. Even the barbers would go down on the ice, the shoemakers. I mean, it was a city on ice, really. And anyway, there's a little event at the moment with some artists being commissioned to the tall building, Marilyn. Let me show you again. This is the Shard. The Shard. It's named the Shard, like a shard of glass, like a broken piece of glass. That was for a while the tallest building in Europe. It's no longer the case. Now we've got taller in, I think, Frankfurt, Germany. And yeah, there's an attraction at the top. You can go to the top. It's called The View. Anyway, let me show you. We've got 3 little pieces here. So that has been done especially for the event. So that's from an artist called Seabox. So that's the alleged elephant that came on the ice. The artists, they've tried to represent someone gender-free. The artists themselves, they are, I believe, non-binary, I suppose. So they wanted to show that it already happened at the time. And they're absolutely right. We've had transgenders and non-binary for decades and centuries. In the 1700s, we did have plenty. The most famous one was Chevalier d'Eon. Chevalier d'Eon was a French spy that lived in London. He used to dress as a woman to go and spy in Russia. And when they moved to London, he's lived as a woman for the rest of his life in Soho. So yes, it did happen. So that's also one of those little tents on the ice. They used to have fire on the ice. And of course, it was very dangerous because they never really know when to stop. You know, the guy with the printing, the guy that printed the Charles, the King Charles thing, he was making £5 a day. We are talking about 600 quid in today's money a day. So you know, when the ice started to melt, what do you do? Do you go and pack up, but you're losing money every day, or do you stay until the last minute? But then you might fall into the ice. Even your printing machine could fall. So it was a balance of knowing when to stop as well. And there have been several accidents and quite a few people dying actually. Let me show you the name of the artist in case you wanted to Google them. There's a little a bit of explanation as well here about what they've done. Right. And there's another one that is a bit further down. It's in the Borough Market. We're not going to go all the way because I'm simply too short to frame it well. I've managed to take a photo earlier this morning, but it's a bit hidden away. So that's by Mr. Sense, another amazing street artist. And you can see, well, it's really the colors that remind you of the Frost Fair. So it's a lady dressed like in the 1800s outfit. And you can see St. Paul's Cathedral in the background in the frozen atmosphere. So yeah, those Frost Fair would have been, there would have been a big party. And as we walk till the next location, let me play a little ballad, a contemporary ballad that kind of described the Frost Fair. I'm not going to play it till the end because it's quite long, but
listen a while though the weather be cold. In your pockets and packets your hands may hold. I'll tell you a story as true as 'tis rare, of a river turned into a Bartholomew fair. Since old Christmas last there has been such a frost that the Thames has by half the whole nation been crossed. Oh, scholars, I pity your fate of extremes. Each landsman has now become free of the Thames. In roast beef and brandy, much money is spent.
borrow, darling, borrow.
With old-fashioned chimneys, the rooms are secure, and the house is from danger of fire insured. The old country squire does stand and admire at the wondrous conjunction of water and fire. Straight comes an archway, a young son of a whore, and lays the squire's head where his heels were before. The spark of the bar with his cane and his muff one day went to treat his new rigged kitchen stuff. Let slip from the gallant the gay damsel tried, as all she had done in the country to slide.
Let's stop it because it lasts for 5 minutes, but it's all about the Frost Fair. If you wanted to listen to the full version, it is on YouTube. It's a group called what are they called? What are they called? It will come back eventually. Oh, the Carnival Band. Yeah, the Carnival Band. It's a ballad from John Evelyn, all about the Frost Fairs. Now, some of you might remember we've been here before. We actually stopped right there in my tour about the Savok poisoner. And I might have mentioned the Monument pub where he poisoned the second victim, Bessie Taylor. Well, it would have been right here across the street, the new build, I believe. Oh, thank you, Cheryl. Yeah, it's them. Right, so let's go. I'll show you another piece of art that was commissioned for the Frost Fair event. Technically, it is not straightly linked to the Frost Fair, but it's about a historical character that would have lived at the time, and he's got a fascinating history. So I'm glad I have finally found an excuse to tell you his history. His name is Charles Ignatius Sancho. He was born Ignatius, but he preferred Charles. He was born, we believe, in 1729. The evidence are a bit bare, but he was born on a slave ship. His parents had been captured, and they were on their way to be sold in New Granada. So that is modern-day Colombia. On the boat, his mum, we believe, died of disease, potentially due to childbirth. About 25% of the slaves on those boats would not make it through the crossing. And we believe his dad committed suicide. He did not want to be enslaved, and he preferred to end his own life. So the boy was raised orphan in New Granada for a few years, and then at the age of 2 or 3, yeah, I know, tragic beginning, but he's gone from slavery to high society. Amazing story, really. So he was raised as an orphan, and at the age of 2 or 3, his master took him to London, and he gifted him to 3 ladies, 3 sisters living in Greenwich. So they took him as a slave, but they would not have called it a slave in Britain, in continental Britain, because we didn't like the idea that we were doing it as well on British floor. So they probably would have called him a servant, but they had all the rights over him, and he was doing the work, so that's a slave. They are the ones that they named him Sancho after the character in Don Quixote, in the Spanish novel. And they raised him, and the young boy wanted to learn how to read. And at the time, well, it wasn't really an option, not for slaves at least. It was actually a rule: no Negro apprentice. You couldn't even hire an apprentice in your shop if they were black. And he really wanted to learn. And in the park in Blackheath, he met the second Duke. Signal has dropped. Oh no, it's better now. Let me show you the art here. Montagu, you might have heard of him. Well, actually, in my British Museum tour, I might have told you that the British Museum was built on the site of Montagu House. So that's the one. When the Duke of Montagu died, his house was sold to become the British Museum. The second Duke of Montagu, he was a big defender of the idea of African intelligence. I know it sounds absolutely ridiculous to us today, but at the time, some people doubted African intelligence. So the second Duke of Montagu, his name was John, amazing man. He actually helped educate a few black people in London. and he actually taught Ignatius how to read, and he let him enjoy his collection of books, a massive library. And when the Duke of Montagu died, Ignatius escaped. He escaped the three sisters, and he went to seek protection with the widow, Montagu's widow, and he worked for her as a butler. And then he could read. He had access to all the library at Montagu's house. He also trained himself with music. He became an amazing composer. He started writing plays. He was the first known Black playwright published. The plays have disappeared, unfortunately. And when the widow died, she left him with a kind of an inheritance, an annual payment of £30. We're talking about £5,000 in today's money. And he ended up working as a valet for her son-in-law. And eventually he had accumulated some money, so he managed to buy a shop, 19 Charles Street in Marylebone. And Mayfair, sorry, not Marylebone. And because he had a shop, he owned property. At the time, in the late 1700s, only about 2% of the population was able to vote, because you had to own property. Well, because he owned property, he was able to vote in the general election in 1774. So he was the first Black Briton to vote in Britain, and some say even in Europe. That would have to be double checked, but yeah. First Black Briton to vote ever. So amazing story, really. And he became an abolitionist. He started to write to the newspaper, to write to some authors as well, to convince them to the cause. In the late 1700s, we started to have a big movement of abolitionism, especially the Quaker. He was not a revolutionary or anything. He was talking as a British man. He was not like a drum beater. He was like an eye opener, really. He would sometimes use the word nigger as to create an effect, to kind of wake up people. But he was a monarchist. He was not, a big revolutionary or anything. And he opened the shop and he sold, he was selling sugar, tobacco, convenience that were actually produced by slaves. He married a lady called Anne Osborne, and they had many kids together. And eventually he ended up dying out of goods. He's now buried in St. Margaret Church. It's the little church right next to Westminster Abbey. You might have seen it. It's literally on the ground of the Abbey. Let me show you his portrait that he had done at the time just before the widow died. And I'm about to show you his new portrait that is here in the streets of London. It's at the entrance to the Africa Centre. The Africa Centre is a charity that kind of helps promote African culture in London. And they've just moved here last June. I don't know whether they didn't have an office before, if they were elsewhere before. But so that's the portrait that served as an inspiration for the artist. The artist is called Dref. Let me show you an auto-portrait of the artist. It's a street artist that I really like as well. He's often doing some amazing, very large portraits, often of black people. And it is right here, and the gate is open. Good. I was a bit worried that they'll close it. Amazing. So that was also commissioned for the Frost Fair event, because you'll see behind him, you'll see the River Thames, and you'll see some people having fun on the ice. So he was alive in 1749. So that's one of the big Frost Fairs. That's one where there were many accidents, actually. Oh, they used to be in Covent Garden. Oh, okay. I was wondering because I didn't remember seeing them anywhere. Oh, cool. Good to know. So there we go. So this is Charles Ignatius Sancho. There is a book about him if you are curious. It is a fiction. It's called The Secret Diary of Charles Ignatius Sancho. It is an actor that has done a tremendous amount of research about his time period and his life. His name is Patterson Joseph, but it's a fiction. It's not his words. So that's quite amazing. And if I zoomed in, you see the little people on the frozen river, and St. Paul's Cathedral in the distance. So that is Charles Ignatius Sancho for you. And oh yes, I didn't even notice the elephant. You know what? Yes, the elephant is there. Well, the elephant is meant to be in the 1814 fair, not the 1739. But yeah, why not? Why not put the elephant? Let me try to give you another angle from here. So yeah, amazing portrait, an amazing man. I'm glad he's got a little portrait so people talk about him. And don't get used to it, but let me give you a vertical as well, because that can be quite cool, because I cannot step back. Don't get used to it though, because I don't really like those Adam shots, but just in case, just for this one. Right, I'm flipping back. And there we go. Let's go back on the street. So that's the artist's name, Dreff. That's his little tag here if you wanted. He does some amazing work. You might have seen some of his stuff on my Jack the Ripper tour. We used to see a Dreff along the way when we were on Fashion Street. And my bicycle is here. Straight ahead, by the way, that used to be the Borough station. Borough used to have a train station until 1907. They've closed it because it was not used. Anyway, that's going to be the end of the tour. Let me know if you have any questions for me.